Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege and deep pleasure to present Barbara Jordan. Please join me in warmly welcoming her.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're running a little late, they say, and so I'll give back some of the time that you would have stood applauding me. I'm going to begin by reading first two statements to you which were made by Henry David Thoreau. When I read them to you, you will know why I chose this occasion to quote Thoreau. The statements: philanthropy is almost the only virtue which is sufficiently appreciated by mankind. Philanthropy is almost the only virtue which is sufficiently appreciated by mankind. Second statement: I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor. Thank you for inviting me to address this 6th annual luncheon of the Dallas Women's Foundation. And I begin with those quotes from Thoreau because, without a doubt, this organization fits quite well into Thoreau's affirmation. How does this organization fit quite well into Thoreau's affirmation? I've read your literature, and you believe that man can lift himself by a conscious endeavor. You believe that. You believe that philanthropy may be exercised to elevate the citizen, elevate women and girls of Dallas. And I learned this morning that there are any number of foundations around there are probably about 60, I was told. And someone said 20, someone said 50, someone said 60. I'll take 60 because you do such good work. You have shown through your grant selections that you have a commitment to brightness and sunshine and light and hope and opportunity for people who seem to be stuck in life's basement. I applaud you. I congratulate you. You meet the challenges. You have the core values. You have the strength. You have a mode of operation, because I read all of your literature. As I said, you have a mode of operation which indicates to me that you are a very tenacious organization. You see, once you have someone who is pretty good as a member, you don't let them go even when they have served out their time. What you have done is established an alumni of the Dallas Women's Foundation, so that you can keep those good people engaged and involved. And that's good. If you've got somebody who is doing the work, don't let them go. But let me tell you this. What you do is much larger than something for the citizens of Dallas. what you do is much larger because there is an idea. In the Democratic Republic, there is an idea in a Republican form of government that the citizen should help the government do its job. The citizen should help the government live up to its promise. Now, some of those who help the government are paid to do so, and we call them paid civil servants. But you don't fall into that category. You volunteer, giving time, energy, money, because you see a need, and then you go about filling it. Now, that sounds like a pretty straightforward proposition. The citizen, the individual, permits, allows the government to do certain things on behalf of the citizen. If the government falls short, the citizen steps in and fills in the gap. Now, that sounds like a pretty straightforward proposition, but it really seems to have gone awry of late. There appears to be a struggle by the American people to get reconnected with their government. What we are seeing is a deep mistrust by the citizen of government. And that mistrust manifests itself in any number of ways. We talk about we want to throw the rascals out, but they're our rascals. We chose them. We don't have to go back very far to notice times that we have become so dissatisfied with the way the government was operating. Times in history, the Civil Rights Act, the Watergate episode, the Vietnam era, the peace movement. There are examples of citizens getting a little bit agitated with their leaders and feeling a dissonance, a disconnect. Well, what I want you to do is focus on reconnecting. Earlier in this century, Robert Penn Warren said, "This broken connection is a kind of dehumanizing, disintegrating effect on our notion of what an individual person can be." Now, I cite Robert Penn Warren, knowing full well that he has a rocky history when it comes to civil rights and human rights, but he's a good novelist, and he said some good things, and he underwent a conversion experience. Now, but Robert Penn Warren had a real conversion, not a David Duke conversion. Now, so, you know. Now, I know you read that David Duke is going to run for president. He said he's going to run in Texas. I'm not afraid of David Duke running in Texas. We've known charlatans in this. You know, we know charlatans so well we could, you know. He doesn't know what he's in for coming to Texas. But really, I sense today that there is a kind of dehumanizing effect on many of our notions of what the individual could be. And the Dallas Women's Foundation believes that individuals can be whatever they want to be with just a little help. That's what this foundation is about, and I congratulate you on doing it, on what you do with these grants. But we have got to make our public officials accountable to us. Now, the New York Times had a story in early November, and this is what was said in that story in the Times. America is in a sour mood. Everyone seems to be thoroughly disgusted with the powers that be, including Congress and the White House. The public is in a rotten mood, so the story went. And that rotten mood is manifested in the observation that 45 states had either pending legislatively or on the ballot some kind of term limitation referendum. Now, I don't know how you feel about term limitations. I don't like them. And I don't like them because we already have a term limitation built into the democratic process, and it's called the right to vote. And you vote people in and you vote people out, and you don't have to circumscribe or proscribe how long they can stay in the office. You see, we sort of have a way of focusing on the wrong things. Term limitation is not really an idea, said Tom Wicker on one occasion. Term limitation is more an emotion, a passion. It defies rational thought. We exercise the right to vote, and generally we make good decisions about the people we put in office. Now note, I said generally, not all the time. But generally, it is only occasionally that we have missteps. Why do we as a people seem to hold the Congress and the politicians in such low esteem? They really come across poorly in the media. Unpaid bills in the house restaurant, overdrafts at the house bank, pay raises passed in the dark of night. And there you see those things and you think, I don't want those people. But that's an emotion, that's a passion. That is not a rational, reasonable, thoughtful response to reconnecting your government with its citizens. It is fundamental to our form of government that it be built on a foundation of trust. We have to trust. We have to trust each other. We're all on this little speck of a planet called Earth, and we have got to trust each other if we do not want to see this tiny planet destroyed. And we can do that. What's happening? People who are elected to public office are not elitist, and we need to tell them that. They're one of us. They serve us. A democracy cannot tolerate an elitist. The public policy maker must enact policies which are inclusive and not exclusive. Harper's Magazine ran a study recently about the quality of life of Americans. The observation was made between 1978 and 1987, American families belonging to the poorest 20% of the population became 8% poorer in that 10 years. That same study reflected during that period the richest 20% of the people of the country became 13% richer. Well, now, that disparity between rich and poor is too apparent at the bottom and the top of the economy, and we should not tolerate it. The income received by the upper 1% of Americans improved by almost 50%, but the income of the lowest, the bottom 1%, fell, declined by almost 15%. That's intolerable. And for the first time in this country, people made as much money on capital as they made in wages. Now think about that. This polarization of wealth, this disparity of opportunity, rich, poor, there are certain basic needs which must be achieved, which must be honored in this country. And that video we saw at the beginning of this luncheon certainly highlighted some of those basic needs. You know the list. You know the list. 37 million Americans without health insurance. I've been seeing that 37 million Americans for the past 6 years. Now, you know, in that period of time, either that number has gone either up or down. It hasn't remained the same. So if we really get into it, that's the figure we're going to have to look at. What are the other figures? Over 25% of the women between the ages of 18 and 24 have no health insurance. 60% of the children coming from families which are poor, 60% have one or more chronic disease. If you're poor, you're going to die earlier. Now, that's not a good statement that we should make and have true. Life expectancy should not be a function of economic status. The numbers on the list are not acceptable numbers, and we have to work to do something about it. Now, what are we going to do about it? We are in a recession. Yes, we are in a recession, notwithstanding what anyone else says. We are in a recession. Now, what are we going to do about that? Once, let's acknowledge the fact. Now, once we have done that acknowledgement, there is then this clamoring. Let's get an answer. Let's get something to jumpstart the economy. How many times have you heard the public officials say, I've got a plan to jumpstart the economy? The thing about it is, all of the plans being recommended will not have that effect. Why? Now, I know that we are Republicans and we are Democrats, but this is a nonpartisan talk I'm making. Therefore, let's be honest. When you have a $5 trillion economy in this economic environment, there is no way to jumpstart the economy. You just can't do it. And if your mayor goes back to Washington and tell Lloyd Bentsen I said that, I am going to say he lies. These are not happy times. These are not happy times for Americans, but we can have better times. And we can have better times if we stop wallowing in how bad the times are. Now just think for a minute. Think for a minute. We are a resilient people. We've been through a lot in this country, and we have overcome a lot. Our democracy works for us. I suggest that when we start looking for solutions, start with what we have. Start with the ideals which are in place in the democracy. Do that first. I know we have problems, but we have learned serious lessons from our past, and they can be useful lessons for our future. We are resilient, we are tough, we are caring. We have a core set of values which we honor and we treasure. These values include respect for the dignity and autonomy of each and every human being. These values include a high regard for truth and honesty and justice and fairness. These are American ideals. We believe in life, not death. We believe that each person is entitled to an existence which enhances rather than a life which depresses and threatens. We find strength in diversity. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. We believe that motto so strongly we write it on our money. Now you know that's belief. I'm optimistic about the future because I have faith and I have trust in the American people. For many, these are difficult times, I realize that. But as a people, we have deep spiritual reserves. The Dallas Women's Foundation, you, your organization, your work is cut out for you. And let the men help. Men can help, and men also care. Now, I do not mean that as a joke, and I hereby atone for anything I ever said which was offensive to some of my male friends. But I want to conclude with a statement made by Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville was a French nobleman who visited the United States in 1831. De Tocqueville came over here to observe our democracy in action. And after he observed, he wrote a book, and it was called Democracy in America. Now, de Tocqueville said this, and this is a direct quote from de Tocqueville. If I were asked to what the singular prosperity and growing strength of that people, the Americans, ought mainly to be attributed, de Tocqueville says, I should reply to the superiority of their women. Men, I didn't say that. A French nobleman said that. But I agree. Thank you for listening to me.